What on earth is Tai Chi? Is it a dance? Is it swimming in the air? Is it a martial art? And most importantly, what's the point of doing it anyway? Well, in the book, The Power of Tai Chi Chuan, I attempt to answer those questions and more. In the book, you'll discover the 3 big benefits of Tai Chi Chuan, examples of how you can apply Tai Chi to your life, and even some basic exercises to try out. You can find the book in paperback or Kindle format on Amazon.com, or just visit warriorstrategy.com/products. Again, you can find the book in paperback or Kindle format on Amazon.com, or just visit warriorstrategy.com/products. Hello there, this is Robin Gamble. Welcome to the Scholar Warrior podcast. Now, the idea of the Scholar Warrior has been around for thousands of years across many great cultures. And the concept is this, that one of the highest achievements in society is to become skilled in the martial arts while also pursuing the scholarly pursuits of painting, poetry, music, philosophy, and more. So it's here that I interview martial artists as well as artists in various fields, so that you, the listener, can gain a peek into their techniques, skills, and strategies for success. And so that you, the listener, may gather these gems and apply them on your own path to self-mastery and excellence. Enjoy. Yo, before we jump into this interview, I want to tell you I learned so much by talking to David, especially when it comes to skill acquisition in the martial arts. And there's concepts he's going to talk about which you'll be able to transfer across disciplines. Hugely valuable. It also takes us about 10 minutes to really get warmed up, so hang on in there. Because afterwards David starts dropping serious gems on martial arts, coaching, cultural assumptions, learning methodology, all kinds of wisdom you can get from David. So you're going to love it. Enjoy. So today we have a highly accomplished martial artist in David Rogers. David has trained in Chinese martial arts since 1984. He's an indoor disciple of Master Deng Jianggong and the only non-Chinese to have learned the entire Deng family Hapkian system directly from Master Deng in Canton. Fluent in Cantonese, he regularly returns to further his studies in Hapkian, Taiji, and Hongqian. And in 1995, he opened the Rising Crane Center, where he teaches Kung Fu, Tai Chi, MMA, and runs a clinic of traditional Chinese acupuncture. A graduate of the College of Integrated Chinese Medicine and a member of the British Acupuncture Council, he served as the technical director for traditional Kung Fu to the British Council for Chinese Martial Arts for 7 years. Since 2005, he's trained No-Gi Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with 4 times world champion Barilio Estima and has incorporated the ground fighting aspect into his MMA classes. He studied MMA in America, Hawaii, and Thailand, and believes the evolution of mixed martial arts represents a valuable method for martial artists to legitimately test their skills and debunk many of the myths prevalent in some classical martial arts. David has coached 9 national and international champions in Kung Fu, Tai Chi, and mixed martial arts, and has had students win competitions in Europe, Hong Kong, and China. I've appreciated your excellent content online for quite a few years, actually, and so it's a great pleasure to welcome David to the show. So welcome, David, to the Scholar Warrior podcast.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Okay. So, as we just read in your bio, you started Kung Fu in 1984. So, my first kind of question that came to mind was, what did your first class look like? What did that look like when you were trying out Kung Fu for the first time?
Well, I tried, before 1984, I tried a number of other martial arts, Japanese, Korean, I'd done some boxing, various things. But it was always the Kung Fu that I wanted to learn. And I remember going to like a Taekwondo class when I was a little kid and saying, when do we learn Tiger and Crane? And they're like, no, that's the wrong class. So, okay. So I got into a Kung Fu class and they were doing, the traditional Chinese forms. And I was like, okay, this is what I want. This is where I'm happy. So it just appealed to me from the beginning, really.
So is the aesthetic, is kind of the look and the feel of it?
At that time, yeah,
Yeah.
as a kid, it
Was
was a big part of it.
was Bruce Lee? Was he an influence back then, or?
Sure, sure. I mean, that was the year I think that Enter the Dragon was put on the TV. So I was 14 at the time. So who would not be influenced by that, right?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So, so what was that art that you started in first of all? What was Wing
The
Chun or
first kung fu class I did was Lao Ga,
Lao Ga? Okay.
and also I did in the UK Hong Ga and Pat Mei as well.
Okay. So for listeners, these are southern styles of kung fu, right?
Southern styles, that's correct. Yeah.
And how would you describe what a southern type of kung fu looks like to someone that doesn't know what that would mean?
Well, generally, they tend to be more famous for things like the low stances, use of the bridge, which is the forearm technique. Tend to use kind of harder power than the northern styles, maybe less jumping, less acrobatic techniques.
Okay. Um, so, what kind of mistakes did you make early on in your training that might have cost you time or results, or you kind of look back at it now and think, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or that would have saved me time?
And that is a good question. I think we just did the best with the information that was available at the time.
Right.
And obviously, it's a different world now. There's much more access to a lot of good knowledge, good information. At the time, it was like you'd spend the whole school term saving up the pocket money. So at the holidays, you can take a train to London and go to the Chinatown and buy some DVDs, which cost at that time a fortune. And now you can just go on YouTube and see it all. So yeah, there was a lot of misconceptions about the art, but I think it was everywhere. I don't think we could have done it any different given what we had at the time, really.
Right. Yeah. It's a totally different kind of game now, where you can go and see
Oh,
world champions training or whatever you
very
want.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't believe what's available online actually sometimes. So, are there any kind of stories that stick out from those early years, or maybe any teachers that made an impact on you, or any classes that kind of you still look back and kind of remember?
I haven't really thought about those times for a long time. It's interesting you bring that up because I'm always tend to be focused on, right, what's the next thing, what's the next thing. In those days, there were a few people that certainly inspired me. In now, guys, a gentleman, John Russell, who's still my good friend now, who was a lot of help in the early days, steering me in the right direction. So I have a lot of time for him. And there was a local instructor, Nigel Thompson, who's now a Muay Thai instructor, but at the time he helped us a lot with our fighting and our sparring. So he was a lot of help. So, but this was more than 30 years ago. It's
Okay,
lost.
yeah, it's a while ago. Okay,
Yeah.
so you were sparring right from the outset. That was always a factor.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That's true.
So when did this decision come to make the move to China?
Really, very early on. Used to watch a lot of kung fu movies, and it was all about Canton and Fatsan. And okay, I'm going to have to go there one day. I'm going to have to study, and really, that was just my whole goal. I wanted to learn it in that area.
So the first trip to China,
First
what
trip, yeah.
what did that look like? When was that?
1990 was my first trip.
So
So,
I was in China. Let me think. The first time was 2000, and it was pretty shocking then. So I can only imagine, perhaps
mm,
1990, it would have been a pretty big culture shock.
it was. I went to Hong Kong first. At that time, you couldn't fly directly into Guangzhou, so I went to Hong Kong first to get the visa sorted out, and that seemed like another world. And then you go on the train, and over, at that time it was a 3 hour trip. I think it's less than an hour now, but at that time, and as you're going further into China, you're going further back in time, and it really was incredibly different. It changed really between 1990 and 1995. Just those few years was the biggest change. I think they put a lot of money into rebuilding, and it's a lot of change in that area.
So why was it? So you already got to Hong Kong. There's
Yeah,
plenty of kung fu there. Why did you go into mainland?
it's looking back, it's hard to say. I suppose I wanted the most authentic experience I could. I suppose I was after that. And having watched all the movies, a lot of the styles, the southern styles, are famous, and coming from Canton, I thought that's where I should be.
Okay, so you're going to recreate those movies.
I suppose so, but again, you didn't really know what you're getting into. It's not like now where you can go online and check out the schools. I mean, you just turn up, and I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea what to expect.
So how did that work? What were you doing? Going around knocking on doors, asking for
Yeah,
masters?
pretty much. I mean, I had a contact, a friend, a brother of a friend who was over there, who was really kind to put me up in his room and help me out in the early days until I found a school. I visited different schools, went to lots of parks early in the morning, to seeing anyone who was practicing martial arts and talking to them. I had a number of people that I dabbled with a little bit and trained with a little bit until I found Dang Sifu, who was, okay, this is the person I want to seriously study under. But it took a few weeks to find someone that I found I really wanted to commit some time to.
So what was it? What was it that stood out, or what was it that felt right to you?
So it's a good question. I think the first time that you go to a lot of schools in China at that time as well, the modern styles of Wushu were very popular. The sort of long fist and the very kind of flamboyant competition styles of Kung Fu. So when you turned up and said, "I want to learn martial arts as a Westerner," they'd assumed that was what you wanted to learn. So I went to a lot of schools, and I'd see these demonstrations, which were really, really amazing. I mean, athletically speaking, but wasn't much emphasis on traditional or applications or so on. I went to Dang Sifu school. Initially, it was the same thing. You got a couple of his young students that were kind of Wushu type champs to demonstrate, and I was like, yeah, very good, but not quite what I'm looking for. And he was, oh, interesting. Well, what were you looking for? And I said, well, I've been studying in the UK, and I'm really interested in traditional Southern style. And I showed him a little bit, and he said, kind of looks like the Kung Fu that my father and grandfather taught. I'm like, yeah, really? And then he got up and he demonstrated some of his hopgar. I was like, oh, yes. The hairs on the back of my neck just stood up immediately. It was like, oh, this is it. Like nobody else that I'd seen. Just the intensity and his feeling when he did the movements, his power and so on. I just thought, yeah, that's it. Have some of that, please.
So it was. So for listeners that may or may not know about Wushu, Wushu is more performance based. We presume they're more flourishes and more for appearance, and your Sifu got up and was doing something what felt quite different.
Yes, Wushu in most art they call in Cantonese just means martial art. So there really isn't a distinction, but it's more that after the Cultural Revolution they were more emphasising it as a performance. So because of competitions, it's just like any other competition. If you have certain rules, then it will tend to distort it in a way that wins the competition. So if you're giving points based on aesthetics and show, then that's going to gradually affect how it's going to be performed. So at that time there was a big emphasis on like high jumps, acrobatic movements, and not that much on fighting at that time. Although the Sanshao was just starting really to make a comeback, so it was changing. Probably if I'd have gone 5 years earlier, it might have been like all performance stuff. But my teacher always, his father's run a private school. At that time, there weren't many private schools. It was all government run. But my teacher's father, because he was on good terms with a lot of people, and they kind of left him alone to do his thing. So although, there were some, for the purposes of competition, he taught some of the modern routines. Most of his classes were traditional, and most of what they did was traditional. He was kind of left alone to get on with it.
Okay, and so he does this. He shows you the forms, and the hair stands up on the back of your neck, and you think,
yeah, right.
This is the stuff that I want to. That this is what I'm looking for. And
yep.
So, how does the process of learning under him work? Are you having to sweep floors for 3 years, or it was quite easy?
It was quite easy because I think he was pleased to find someone that wanted to learn and was prepared to take it seriously. And I was in a position at that time not having to work, and I'd saved up some money to be able to afford to have private lessons. So I was staying in the school, and I trained with the other students in the classes. But then I got several hours a day one-on-one, which was such a privilege. And with the way that the time and the economy and everything has changed, I wouldn't be able to do that now. But I was just very, very fortunate at that time. You know, the pound was strong, and at that time, and I could just go, okay, I want so many hours a day private lessons. So I mean, he's a professional instructor, so obviously getting his time is not the problem. It's more sort of convincing him that to teach you in a more in-depth way, and making him feel that you're worth really sharing a bit more information or a bit more knowledge with, which is just really a matter of just training hard and just showing him you're serious.
Right. Okay. So you then decided, or maybe was it necessity that you studied Cantonese, or you picked up Cantonese?
Yeah, he didn't speak English. So the first time I went, I had an interpreter, and so it was a bit of a pain because everything, you know, you had to go through the interpreter for everything. And he said to me, "All right, come back next." At the end, my first day I was there for a few months, like 6 months, and at the end of it, he said, "Okay, come back next time, no interpreter." So as soon as I got back to the UK, I tried to get a teacher, bought some textbooks, some tapes, sort of tried to teach myself, and like one lesson a week from a teacher. But I was mainly watching a lot of kung fu movies and trying to in Cantonese and trying to sort of teach myself. But I would say maybe it took me 2 or 3 years to be able to have a reasonable conversation, something like that.
Okay, so what kind of insights did you get? I don't know, martially, culturally, or linguistically from picking up Cantonese. I obviously I've been in Asia quite a while. I've picked up a little bit here and there, and I find one of the interesting things is you get a real insight into just the totally different kind of ways that people think when they're on the other side of the planet speaking another language. So, were there any interesting insights from Cantonese?
I think the way that they describe the art, Cantonese has a lot of different words which in English translate quite similarly. So there might be kind of nuances in terms of different types of power or energy or feeling that you really kind of have to speak Cantonese to make the distinctions, to make that. That's really hard to say exactly.
Yeah, maybe it's a more intuitive thing, huh?
I think it is.
Yeah.
And obviously the names of the techniques and so on tend to come from like the Chinese traditional stories and the culture. So you have to know something about the history and the culture in order to make sense of it.
Right. Okay, I would love to kind of switch subjects just a little bit and dive into the arts that you're teaching at the moment, because you teach quite a range. So could you tell us the different arts that you teach and maybe describe them a little bit?
Sure. I teach three different classes which have different emphasis. So the Kung Fu that I teach is Hapga primarily, and also some Hongga as well. And then the Tai Chi that I teach, which is also from my Sifu Damjiang Gong, which is Yang style Tai Chi. And the third class will be the MMA mixed martial art class,
right?
Which is a little different.
Yeah, and so it seems that you've been pretty prolific in producing some quality fighters. So over the years. So what kind of events do they compete in?
Now we only do mixed martial arts events. We used to do the Chinese martial arts. We did the traditional forms and the weapons and the Tai Chi and the push hands. I got a little bit, I wouldn't say disillusioned, but a little bit fed up with it, shall we say, a few years ago. And I said, I'm not going to do competitions anymore. I'm not going to do competitions. And then I felt it was maybe doing the students a disservice. And then I thought, okay, we need a new challenge. What I liked about mixed martial art competition is there's nobody trying to skew the results. There's nobody trying to make you fight a certain way or a certain style. So sometimes in the Chinese martial art, they would be desperate to keep out people from particular styles or make sure that they fought in a certain way in order to conform. And that goes on. I mean, even for example, in judo in the Olympics, they made rule changes to make it difficult for the wrestlers to compete. And I think that's not the healthiest thing. I think the technique should come from the bottom up, not from the top down. When you've got someone at the top saying, okay, we're going to ban this to make it look more like our preconception of what it should look like, I think you're killing the evolution, you're killing the art. When you have it the other way around, you say, well, your objective is to, knock someone out, submit them or throw them or whatever it is, and let the people figure out the most efficient way of doing that, and then the techniques that work best kind of bubble through. So it's a very different. The thing about mixed martial arts, there's no authority on it. There's nobody at the top saying it should look like this. Everyone brings their own stuff to it, and the stuff that works will be kept, and the stuff that doesn't will be discarded. So it's a kind of a Darwinian evolution, and I appreciate that. I like that more, because whenever you have someone at the top controlling it, it always gets a little. It becomes more about ego and becomes about people's opinions and power and so on. And I just wanted to move away from that for a while. But alas, MMA is going the same way inevitably. I mean, everything eventually will go that way. So for me, it's just keep moving on and keep learning. Just that.
So in what ways is that happening in MMA as well, do you feel?
Well, if you kind of watch the UFC, for example, which is the sort of the epitome of it, it's becoming a bit of a show and a bit sort of WWE in terms of it's all about characters and personality. It's driven by money, like everything else, and the audience wants to see a certain type of fight. So again, they're matching up and creating that type of fight. What I liked about the early days was that you really didn't know. It was like, does this work? Let's try it out. And it was that appealed to me. It's not, although I teach MMA, I'm not I have to say this, I'm not a great fan of the sport or the culture of MMA. It's simply what I love about it is that you can compete, you can try your art and see what works. And so I think in today's society where we're not going out and getting into fights, I mean, my teacher's, granddad's day, it was a different thing. You were trying your Kung Fu out all the time. The problem now is a lot of people teach martial art. It's not a problem if you're honest and say, it's not about fighting, or I'm not a fighter, that's fine. But if you're claiming to teach fighting and your stuff isn't functional, or you've got no way of testing it, that's a problem. So MMA, I think, is a pretty legitimate way to test it as much as we can in today's society anyway, without hurting each other too seriously.
So was this a process that you started organically yourself before MMA?
Yeah.
And so how did that go? What did that look like as you were doing that?
Well, it's interesting because if we put some videos on YouTube like years and years ago, and people were sort of saying, wait a minute, that looks like MMA. I was like, yeah, funny that. Because I think if you're, the analogy I've used another time, you may have heard me say this, but I give the analogy of different types of dogs, that they're bred for different purposes. Some are show dogs, some are fighting dogs, and they, again, if you're having like a show breed, certain characteristics will get exaggerated beyond the functional. They just become aesthetic. But if you release the dogs back in the wild, eventually they'll something like resemble wolves again, because the DNA's there. It's just got to be used in a functional way, and it will gradually go that way. Same thing for martial arts. As you take the rules away and you let people test it realistically, they all kind of start to resemble each other. And most people in martial arts want to be different. Oh no, our style does it different, or we do it like this, or with something quite unique. But it never seems to hold up that way when you have a fair competition and you take the rules away and you're not trying to skew it in a certain way and say, well really, what does it look like? And my teacher told me right back in the early days, I had these romantic ideas. I said to him, what did the fights look like in the time of the 10 Tigers of Canton? And he sort of looked at me and said, well, they look like fights, fights look like fights. And at the time, I didn't get it. I was expecting a really different answer. Now I totally get it. I'm like, Sifu was right, but it took me 30 years to kind of figure that out. But it's the way it is.
All right. So were you testing the evolution of your own art in your own evolution yourself through the years? You were mixing it up with other people, or just
yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of students that are very successful in competition. I think because I'm not a competitive fighter, wasn't interested in winning titles or trophies or being competitive in that way, which in a way I think it's helped me as a coach, because I'm not, I want my students to be much better than me at fighting. So that's not really, it wasn't my goal to be necessarily a great fighter. It was more just to understand and test the material in a realistic way and say, oh, can we make this work? How does this actually work? So I was always sparring with other fighters and trying stuff out. Cross training and different people in grappling and striking and Thai, all different things, and trying to figure out, hey, how might this have worked? How can I make this work better? So that was more the motivation for me, just to understand it more.
Okay. So, in your position as a coach, I'm sure you're proud of all of your fighters. But are there any moments as a coach that particularly you're fond of, or you're proud of, or specific fights or performances perhaps that kind of stick out in your memory as a coach?
Ooh, let me think. There's quite a number. I mean, especially in the mixed martial arts. So more recently, I'll give one example. Is that one of my fighters who took a fight, and there was an international challenge. It was the kind of the world. They call it the world's championship for amateur MMA. It was a team from America. The World Challenge, they called it. They were taking fighters all over the world. They come to England, and the English guy who was supposed to fight at a certain weight, it was 85 kilos, got injured. And I got a phone call, do you have someone who's ready to fight in 2 weeks? One of my guys, Ben Mobbs, who's a terrific fighter, and he was in good shape. I was like, yeah, okay, we'll take this challenge. And obviously it was a totally different level to anything he'd ever experienced before. I think the first round he was like, what the heck is going on? This was like serious. And then, second round he turned it around, he knocked the guy out, and it was like, oh man, that was such a cool moment. So yeah, he won the world title belt for amateur MMA on 2 weeks' notice. So I'd have to say that's got to be a standout one.
That is pretty phenomenal, and that was quite recently.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, well, yeah. That's a pretty good one as it goes for coaches.
It was a pretty good one, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, obviously, you can't. His attribute, his heart, and his determination. It's not down purely to for me as a coach. That's something it was innate in him. Mm. We just gave him the ability and gave him the techniques and the skills. But you can't do that. You have to have someone who's a bit special before you can turn them into that, I would say.
Tremendous. So you train a variety of arts.
Yeah.
How do you think you've benefited from each of them, or do you find that one feeds another, or another feeds the other, or do you find them complementary?
Find them complementary. Yeah, I have a different kind of way of coaching. When I teach MMA, I don't teach separate arts, and that's something that makes me a bit different to the other clubs. So typically when people do mixed martial arts, they'll learn some Thai, some wrestling, some jiu-jitsu, and then they'll combine it. My philosophy about teaching fighting is backwards. It's the other way around. I look at it like this. When a child goes to school and they learn different subjects, they don't say, for example, learn mathematics from beginning up to A-level standard, then go back and try and learn English from beginning up to, what they do is they get a broad but not too deep base, and then what they gradually do is narrow and go deeper. And it seems to me in martial arts people do the other way around. They say, no, you have to be, before you can do MMA, you have to be really good at one system. And I don't think that's right. I think that's wrong thinking. If you specialize too early, first you're killing their potential in other areas, and you might be specializing in the wrong thing, because you don't know until you actually integrate and spar in that way where's your strengths, where's your weaknesses, what you need to kind of concentrate on. So yeah, my coaching method, you don't really hear me talk about styles in my MMA classes. I mean, I may be teaching a technique that I learned in China, or I may be teaching a technique I learned, say, from a wrestling class in America, or from something from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but I don't actually teach arts or styles from a fighting point of view. I teach fighting. So what that does is it's a different kind of vibe. So, for example, excuse me, I'll concentrate on a part of the fight, say the open range or the clinch. But I don't see the point, if you're training for MMA, of spending a lot of time on the clinch where the person's not trying to take you down, or where you're wrestling each other and you're not trying to punch each other, because that's not representative of what the MMA match is. So really that's where we start. We start from that, and then we train what we call specific sparring. So in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they'll spend a lot of time in a particular position. So they may say, for example, side control or half guard, or one particular position, and then they'll particularly work from that with a goal. The goal might be to pass into a more dominant position, or to escape, or to sweep, or whatever. And I thought that idea was brilliant, because like at Braulio School in Birmingham, where I went for a number of years, I'd watch these people, and they could learn to fight really quickly that way, because rather than working a particular technique. They had a puzzle. They had a specific situation, like situational sparring. And I thought, why can't you do that with MMA? Why can't you? I didn't see people doing it. It was all like they had to either, pound each other senseless, which is crazy training, or train individual arts in a way that wasn't terribly representative of the MMA itself. And I still to this day, I can't figure out why people don't do that. You take the part of the fight, so you might be, I don't know, for example, back to the cage or wherever's the position you find yourself in, and say, right, from this position, what techniques can we use? How can we do this? How can we drill this? And then just the same way, like you've seen like Muay Thai in Thailand, they don't kill each other in training. They don't kick full power in sparring, and it's a controlled thing. So why not say, okay, we can do the same thing with the MMA. We can go fairly light with the striking and respect the head contact, but at the same time train realistically for positional dominance, for clinch dominance, for escapes, and so on and so forth. So that way of teaching removes the whole idea of styles, if you like. I don't go there. Unless I'm teaching a cultural thing, like if someone wants to learn a form, someone wants to learn a tradition, that's different. They're coming to learn that. If you want to learn fighting, I think that can be unnecessarily. It can be long-winded. Again, it just depends what the person's after. In my MMA classes, I don't specifically talk about styles. Although someone that comes from Hopgar will look at it and go, that's the triangle step, that's the cup choi, power choi, whatever the techniques, because they're absolutely functional. But I don't think it's necessarily useful to explain them in that way to someone that's just turning up, wants to learn to fight, or wants to do MMA.
Right, I see. That's very interesting. So you find it the style can be a hindrance if there's just a certain result that you're going for.
Every style has certain assumptions because a style is inseparable from a culture, and so once you have a certain cultural assumption, you're limiting that. So, example, in Thailand, when I was there, I was training in Tiger Muay Thai. They had an MMA camp there, and I trained there. And they were saying that in the Lumpini Stadium, they were trying to ban MMA because seeing people rolling on the ground was like dogs fighting. It was like very low class. Whereas in the Muay Thai is the sport of kings, and it's much more highly regarded. Okay. If you go to Brazil, they're saying the exact opposite thing. They're saying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a very gentlemanly pursuit and it's very high class, but kicking each other in the head, now that's really low class, and so on. Really, nobody's right or wrong. It's just you're brought up with a certain assumption. I mean, Chinese martial art, they have no problem with kicking in the groin, but in MMA, it's like, that's really bad. You can't kick to the groin. So you have to start off with a certain cultural assumptions, and then you've set yourself up. The art is skewed in such a way that usually if someone comes with without that assumption or from a different art, they can see a glaring hole or a gap or a way to exploit that. So why not just not start with that? Why not just start with the fight? And then if you want to learn the cultural stuff afterwards, cool, I love that. I'm happy to teach it.
Okay. Thank you for that. That's an insight. I had not pondered that previously. So this is a little bit out of left wing, this next question, but I saw you post some really cool videos of you and your son occasionally as well doing some training.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he looks like a beast.
He is a beast.
So do you think that martial arts has improved your performance as a father at all, or does it improve your other roles in life?
What a good question. Has improved more as a father. It has challenges. Like my son wanted to do. He's done one fight in the cage, one MMA fight, and the feeling is really mixed between I want him to go and do what we've been training for so many years to do, and on the other hand, no, I don't want him to get hurt. I don't want him to go there. So mixed feelings. I say the whole kind of culture of MMA can be a bit glorification of violence and hurting people and that kind of side. I do have a problem with that. But in what way has it helped me as a father? I think to encourage them. I have a daughter as well who's also an inspiration. She's a Paralympic sprinter. So they're both in their fields, very accomplished. And I think I always encourage them from the very beginning to enjoy training. They both did kung fu from when they could, walk. But I never pushed them. I never pushed them to compete. I never pushed them to train if they didn't want to train. Just tried to make it fun. Unfortunately, they enjoyed it, and they continued their training. So same thing with I've applied that to their schooling, their education. It's like they're doing very well, but I never forced them to study. It was about trying to encourage a love of knowledge, more interested in teaching them to think critically rather than teaching them what to think. So I suppose, as a coach and a father, very similar. It's like trying to give them the information that they need and the freedom to find out for themselves and develop their own way and find their own path. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, very much. I mean, it seems like it's gone cross disciplines. I mean, it's like the kind of the discoveries you've made through coaching in yourself, I guess, and then coaching other people, and it seems a little bit transferable.
Yeah, there has to be a congruence in what you do. I mean, if you have all these philosophies about martial arts, but they don't apply in day-to-day life, then you'd have to question, is it real? Is it useful? One of the things I like about the kind of functional approach is you can test your stuff, find what approach works for you, and then that should hopefully stand up to day-to-day life, rather than it being some kind of a fragile bubble that you can't really take outside of the training hall because it doesn't work for you.
Which is very much the scientific method, right?
Yeah. I mean, this has been said by a good friend of mine and a big influence on my thinking, Burton Richardson. He used to write a column for Inside Kung Fu, which I used to read, back in, I suppose it was the late 80s, and he was talking about this stuff then. So I think by that I mean the application of the scientific method to martial arts. So he was a big influence on me in that area. The other thing that he really helped me with, because I went to Hawaii and I did some private lessons with him, took some classes with him, and it was his approach to applying the same thing to weaponry. Why not do that with the swords and the knives and the sticks? Let's get some padded weapons and test everything out in sparring, and you can apply the same approach to everything. So I suggest anyone who's interested in that check out his website, Jikundo Unlimited.
Okay. So over the course of your training and coaching, has there been any kind of aha moments that really stick out? I mean, I guess the scientific method would be one kind of big aha moment, but any others perhaps? I know you've already given us quite a lot, but maybe some other ones that, like a little thing gone off and you're going, okay, maybe now I get it, or this is a shortcut.
All the time. I mean, I'm changing my mind all the time about stuff. It's one of the reasons, people said to me, why haven't you done a book, or why haven't you done this, why haven't you done that? It's because I'm always changing my mind. I suppose watching, for example, that I was saying about the Brazilians doing specific sparring and thinking, we can use that. Why doesn't Kung Fu do that? And so that was a big one. I think it was that a lot of people in traditional Chinese martial art, they always talk about their teacher's teacher and how this person used that technique in fighting. It was all good. I trained and I learned all this stuff. I mean, my Sifu gave me some really functional techniques, but I didn't feel initially, I felt it was a bit secondhand. It was like, so-and-so's teacher's teacher could use this, but doesn't mean I can, doesn't make me any good. So I suppose the big aha moment was, can I do this? And is there some way we can train this? So these days we've got protective equipment. People say MMA is not traditional, or this and that. Do you really not think if the Shaolin monks had access to protective equipment and padded walls, padded floor, shin pads and so on, would they have not used that? Does it not make more sense to be able to train and spar every day 10, 15 rounds and not get injured, rather than have one fight every few weeks and then have to recover from it? I mean, is that not a more sensible approach? The other thing is we're training for health as well, so it has to be healthy. You don't want to train in such a way that's detrimental to your health. So I accept there's always going to be some compromise between realism, if you like, and safety. But these days you can get pretty close. We can do pretty close. We can train stuff that's just pretty functional, and then we can test it by occasionally fighting for real against good opponents and proving it that way. But so I think it's just being open-minded. I get aha moments from other things, from other areas. I read maybe things on coaching, on philosophy, on different things. I'm interested in a lot of different subjects, and I'll see something and I'll apply. I think, oh, that would apply over here. So, I don't claim to be any kind of great innovator, but I think I maybe take things from other areas and apply them in ways maybe that other people in martial arts aren't doing yet.
Okay, so just changing direction again, and we can jump into some stuff that perhaps listeners, if they're training martial arts or thinking about training martial arts, could maybe apply themselves. So you're obviously very interested in testing the efficiency of what you train. So are there any tips that you would give for anyone in general that is doing martial arts that would keep their training honest and effective? Maybe a couple of tips, or even just one sentence that would help them keep their training honest and effective.
Most MMA clubs, which are everywhere nowadays, welcome people to come along and spar. We welcome people here. If someone comes along, turns up and is beating us at something, we'll go, whoa, cool, share it. And if it isn't, then they'll learn something. So I would say don't be afraid to go out. Most MMA clubs, I mean, I can't say for all, but most are friendly places. People just want to learn. So I would say go out there and get out of your bubble, get out of your little group, and spar with some people. That would be my first thing. It doesn't have to be competitive. Don't go in there with an attitude and trying to beat people. Just go and say, oh, I'd like to try a bit of sparring. And most instructors are really cool with that these days. So that would be a start.
What do you think, or in your experience, what are the core qualities for someone becoming a winning fighter or a championship fighter? Like core qualities that perhaps you've noticed.
Consistency first. So many people turn up, they train like crazy for a few weeks, and then you don't see them for another few weeks, or they can only come when they've got a fight coming up. The ones that are here, just enjoy the training, just enjoy the challenge, just try and be a little bit better all the time. Just continually work to improve yourself, and you'll get there. Not everyone's going to be a champion. Not everyone's wants to get in there. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't want to give the impression I'm all about teaching professional fighters or something like that. That's really not my thing. I'm really happy to teach someone who just wants to learn to get fit or defend themselves, or someone that wants to learn traditional martial arts. It's all good, but we rely on the fighter's part of it to kind of keep the thing evolving. There has to be some people performing at the highest level, and then everyone benefits from it because it trickles down. You can maybe you could get someone who's a champion and say, well, can we spar, but please go easy on me, and then you have some kind of feeling, oh yeah, okay, this was better than it was last month or something. Just keep that idea of just keep improving. Don't try and go 100% all the time. Don't kill yourself don't spend all your time on the strength conditioning and completely blast yourself and then you've got no energy. Do everything to a sensible level, and just enjoy the process.
Someone who would maybe, as you alluded to just then, is just looking to gain an ability to defend themselves. What do you think they should focus on?
Cool. That's a great question, because I think lots of people get this one wrong. I think you can get a lot of functional self-defense skill by sparring in a way that's not, a lowish intensity in terms of power. You can strike at, I say, 30% power. You can train realistically in terms of the clinch and the ground and the escapes. You can train with a weapon, by using padded weapons and spar with it, and some knives and so on, and sticks. So it's just a matter of finding ways to train and keeping it fun and keeping it honest. But I think not everyone needs to spar hard, but everyone needs to spar. You need to play. Animals learn by playing. When you watch tiger cubs, it's interesting that you see like martial arts, traditional martial arts is supposed to be based on the movements of animals, right? But when you see animals, they play, they roll around, they move, they don't put their claws out when they're playing. They just get the position and they go, yeah, okay, got that. And then they have a laugh and they do it again. And that we're wired. That's how human beings learn. The more playful it is, the more you learn. And yet, for some reason, when people do martial arts, they say, "Oh, this is based on the movements of animals," but it's all really rigid and stiff. And you're looking at it thinking, "Well, I've never really seen any animals kind of do it like that. That intuitively doesn't make sense to me." So to me, it's enjoy it, play, because by play fighting, first it's healthy. You're going to move your body in all different ways, work on your flexibility, coordination, spatial awareness, and so on. And it's a lot of fun. And then you're actually starting to develop some functional skills by making the play. It doesn't have to be competitive, but it has, a little bit, just not too much. So you have a certain goal, right? Your goal is to pin me down. My goal is to escape. Your goal is to take me down. My goal is to hit you before you can get me to the floor. And again, the analogy of having the claws in. You put a glove on, you put a pad, you pull your punch. You can still develop pretty good self-defense skills that way, but purely learning the movements or just doing them in empty air doesn't really give you the ability then to transfer the skills into the fighting. So average person, I would say, don't get hit in the head too hard too often. It's not healthy, it's not clever. Don't need to go crazy. It's not. People think it's like you either on one hand just purely doing forms, or on the other hand you're training like a UFC professional fighter. There is actually there's a middle ground. There's a continuum, and you can start on a fairly low down, and you can pick it up as you enjoy it more, and you get better at it.
Okay. Are there any movies, documentaries, books that you've read or watched and you've enjoyed? You've got inspiration from them, and they're connected to martial arts, and maybe someone listening would benefit from taking a look. So it could be a movie, a documentary, or a book.
Oh man, I wish
maybe there's a lot of them.
I wish I prepared this. I have a lot of books connected to martial. I enjoy, like, for example, a book like 4 Hour Body, Tim Ferriss. I like that approach. If anyone's not familiar, it's about deconstructing skill acquisition and trying to find the most efficient way of getting there. Essentially, it's like the ultimate lazy person's hack. It's like, how can I get the maximum result with the minimum effort? And then if you apply that with the concept of like leveraging that, so you're creating you're getting the 80% of the result with the 20% of the effort. That's the sort of Pareto principle applied to martial arts. Right? What's the most effective exercises I can do if I've only got 10 or 15 minutes a day to train? Okay, and then you're going to say, then how can I use those skills that I've got from that in the most efficient way? So in other words, I'm leveraging those skills, and then repeat and repeat and repeat. And you can end up with a disproportionately large amount of effectiveness for quite a small input of time and energy if you're smart. So yeah, definitely about training smarter. I know you've interviewed Pavel on your show, Pavel Masek, and he's great at that. So I'd suggest anyone to check out Practical Hong Kong website as well, because there's some good stuff on that.
Absolutely. Well, this is not a question I had lined up, but it follows the question of what does your training look like if you're following that kind of.
What does my training look like? I cycle my training, so as not to get too stale, not to get too, keep the body adapting. So I'll go through different cycles. Maybe if I tend to train six days a week. I always have a day off, day's rest, or I may do some Tai Chi or some stretching on that day. But I always have a recovery day. So I may alternate a strength kind of workout with a cardio type of workout. So I may do some strength training. It might be traditional, like the Hopgar weights or kettlebells or some barbell stuff, alternated with some kind of, say, cardio, which is usually martial arts specific, and rounds of sparring, and I'll switch it up. So one day might be more emphasizing grappling, one day more striking, one day more weapons, and that's basically I do that 6 days a week, as well as teaching the Tai Chi and the Kung Fu, so I get some kind of strength and flexibility workout through that as well, joining in with that.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to fire some bonus questions at you to kind of round off, and does that sound okay? Yeah.
Absolutely, go for it.
Okay, so these, I mean, they're meant to be a little bit quicker, but it doesn't matter if they take more time. If you want to give a more complete answer, it's fine.
All right.
What are you not really good at?
I'm not really good at. And this is supposed to be a quick answer. Lots of things. Okay, I'm good at I'm just going to flip it around a second. I'm good at achieving goals that I set. So if I've set my mind to achieve something, I'll achieve it. What I'm not good at is identifying early enough what's the right goals, what I should be trying to achieve. That I'm not so good at. What else am I not good at? Managing people. I'm really not good at that. I'm learning that. Yeah, I would say those are my two big things.
Okay. Tell me something that's true that almost nobody else agrees with you on.
What's true that almost nobody else agrees with me on? I think that's true. And this is the slowest answer, and this is the quick fire round, right? That nobody agrees with me on. That it's better to start off as a specialist, as a generalist, and then become a specialist rather than the other way around.
Yeah. Favorite quote?
As I said, the problem of the world is that the intelligent people are full of doubt, whereas stupid people are full of confidence.
Who's that?
Bukowski, I think it is. I'll have to check.
Sounds very accurate.
Absolutely.
Your biggest or weirdest fear?
Wow. Weirdest fear. Biggest or weirdest fear. Don't know. I don't know. Being interviewed, not having a quick answer to a question.
What was funny there was I think I can hear a clock ticking in your office.
Yeah, probably was. It's the weirdest fear. I might get back to you, and they'll probably pop into my head in a few minutes, and I'll answer that one. Right?
Okay, don't worry. This is the last one.
Oh, go on.
You can have any 3 people, living or dead, to dinner. Who do you choose?
Ooh. 3 people, living or dead, to dinner. I suppose in the Kung Fu world, it would be probably Wong Gan Lam, the Hopgar founder. Maybe Wong Fei Hong from the Honggar. Living or dead. Come on, David. It's the pressure now.
So you've got 2, huh? You've got 2 already.
Got 2, right?
One more. Could be anyone.
Who would I like to have for dinner? I suppose maybe Christopher Hitchens.
Oh yeah, Hitch. It's 5 years now, isn't it?
5 years, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, very good. So before we let people know how they can get in contact with you, any final words for anyone aspiring to be a scholar warrior? Any words of advice or anything that you'd like to say to anybody that's listening?
I think the fighting part of it is just the phase, just something to get past. I don't want to create the impression that that's what I'm about. I mean, it was something that was missing in my training earlier. Not the sparring, but so I was just trying to understand how everything's pulled together, how to train that. So I can see probably in a few more years it's maybe something that I'll have got out my system, and I'll be back to just doing Tai Chi or something like that. I don't think it's the be all and end all of it, but I think it's something that if you're doing martial arts, you have to understand the martial part of it. Otherwise what you're doing isn't coming from your own experience, isn't coming from your own feeling. So I'd say, go out there and try stuff. Get your own experience. Don't just learn secondhand. Don't just copy somebody else.
Okay. People obviously are going to want to go and check you out online, or maybe, I don't know, send you an email or whatever. How should they do that? What should they do? If they've listened and they're hooked,
yep.
Where should they go?
You can email me at david@risingcrane.co.uk. Our website www.risingcrane.co.uk, although that's more for potential students of the school, but it's better to email me if you want to. We've got a Facebook group. We've got a number of Facebook groups for different arts and different styles. So if you send me an email, I'll be happy to send you links to all of those.
You got a YouTube channel as well, right?
YouTube channel, David Rogers 99.
Right. Okay, excellent. And I'm going to, wherever this show goes up, it will go up all over the place, iTunes, and I'll put all your contact details in there, and people will be able to get hold of you.
Yeah, I'm always happy to hear from people, so that's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, and I hope we can meet in person one day. I would very much like that. So we'll see.
That'd be really good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cheers.
look forward to that.
Hey guys and girls, before you go, I want to tell you about the Mindfulness for Modern Life bundle I've created for you. You can get this for free when you sign up for updates at warriorstrategy.com. Now in this bundle, you're going to get an 8 Tai Chi Chuan Performance Enhancers PDF, a powerful Qigong video, and a mindfulness audio track. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to warriorstrategy.com. Hey, this is Robin Gamble, thanking you for listening, hoping you enjoyed the content, and kindly asking you to share with your friends if you did. Thanks again, and see you next time.